If you were around during the 1990s, you may remember the earlier days of home computer gaming. My family had an older desktop running Windows 95, and on it was a collection of games released by Microsoft. One of those games was a game called Jezzball. Jezzball is really quite simple. It's a grid-based game with balls bouncing alongside the screen. The objective of the game is to cover up or section off the grid into as small amount of space as possible, thus trapping the balls into a smaller area. You do this by placing your cursor on the screen, either vertically or horizontally, by clicking the middle mouse button, and it protrudes lines that will go out to the edge of the screen. Make sure that your ball doesn't touch any of those lines because it will delete that line and you will lose a life. Once you meet a certain threshold or percentage, the game moves on to the next level with an additional ball thrown into the mix. The game was fun. I didn't play it too often, but it was enough to leave an impression on me. This is a floppy disk version of Jezzball my family had for some reason. I'm fairly certain that Jezzball was something that was just part of Windows 95. I could be wrong. I haven't played the darn thing officially that way since I was a child. But we still have the floppy disk, and it made me wonder, how could I play Jezzball now? Are there other versions of Jezzball? I mean, this was Microsoft we're talking about. So I did some research, and it turns out that Jezzball is very similar to a much older arcade series of games called Qix. But what is Qix? That's what I'm here to find out today. Qix was released in 1981 by Taito's American division and was designed by husband and wife team Randy and Sandy Pfeiffer. The story goes that Randy had a license plate on his car that read, "Just for Qix," and it served as the inspiration for the name. Qix is very similar to Jezzball. Instead of bouncing balls, your enemy is the Qix, a strange geometric force you must contain. Instead of using a cursor to create lines on either side, you glide around the edges and make a trail to section off smaller and smaller areas. The goal of each stage is to cover 75% of the level before advancing. You can go fast or slow when making lines. Slow lines make red boxes, which are worth more points, while the fast lines create the blue boxes. Along the edges of your field you will find sparks. These also damage the player when touched, and a timer at the top of the screen alerts you when more sparks spawn. There is no music, only drowning sounds of the Qix speeding along the black background as the Qix hunts you down. Qix brings simple yet intriguing game design, especially during the early age of arcades. Reviewers and gamers alike praised Qix on release. It was the 5th highest grossing arcade in Japan in 1981, despite being designed in America. According to Electronic Games magazine, it was one of Taito's most popular arcade machines in 1983. Qix even has a cameo in the original Karate Kid movie. Critics compared the drawing nature of Qix to an Etch-a-Sketch. It was creative and had many different ways to complete levels. This also became a problem with the game's longevity. Keith Egging, Taito's director of creativity, reported that, quote, "Qix was conceptually too mystifying for gamers. It had a random mapping program that allowed for constant alteration. It was impossible to master, and once the novelty wore off, the game faded." Despite its shrinking appeal, Qix had a handful of clones and copycat versions released for various home consoles and computers during the 80s. Most popular of all was the official versions developed for home consoles with Nintendo. Qix released on the Game Boy in 1990 and on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991. These are the versions I became most familiar with when discovering Qix. The NES version features much better colors and little music when compared to the arcade original. Reception for the NES version was pretty good upon release. Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine rated the NES version number 100 in its top 100 NES games list from 1997. Today, this is the home console version that is the most expensive. I've seen cartridges go for close to $100 for this one online. On the other hand, the Game Boy version is the most affordable today. I'm playing through my Super Game Boy on the Super Nintendo, which explains the better colors pictured here. The most notable feature in this version is in its intermissions between levels. The intermission features Mario wearing a sombrero. Many gamers today may recognize this outfit from its appearance in Super Mario Odyssey. Qix having a lasting influence on Nintendo and Mario is really quite something. It wasn't uncommon to see Mario cameo in Game Boy games from this era, and Qix was published by Nintendo for Game Boy, but it's still cool to see him cameo in a property not created by Nintendo. Qix on Game Boy even supports a 2-player mode. Players take turns drawing boxes on the same map. It requires the Game Boy link cable to play, and it lets you play on either Team Mario or Team Luigi. The game's instruction manual goes into detail as to how to play. The Game Boy version would see a re-release as part of the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console. Today, it's my favorite way to play Qix. Meanwhile, Qix in the arcade would have some follow-ups. Qix II and Super Qix released later in the 80s, but not to as much fame as the original. Qix II gave an upgraded color scheme and awarded extra lives by completing 90% of the stage. A decent sequel, but nothing that really changed the game. Super Qix, however, released in 1987, changed the formula considerably. Instead of the geometric design, the Qix was replaced with various monsters that bounced around the screen. The inclusion of power-ups changed the game as well, with items like shields, speed-ups, and an ability that froze enemies for a period of time. As you played the game, a picture would be revealed in the background in the cleared area, something that would become a staple for future Qix games to come. Super Qix never received a home console release, but its innovations to the Qix formula was adopted by many, one of which was a Qix clone, the only of its kind released on the Super Nintendo. This is Cacoma Night in Bizyland, developed by Effect, the same developers as Kenda Rage, if you recognize the art style and direction here. Released early in the Super Nintendo's lifespan, Cacoma Night definitely takes notes from Super Qix. You play as one of 3 characters who is trying to save the world of Bizyland from an evil mirror who has swapped Bizyland with Lazyland. The king of Bizyland asks you to save the princess who has become trapped inside the mirror. This explains the dark and light versions of the backgrounds that change as you play the game. The presentation with the story is interesting for a Qix-type game, and it can be humorous at times. Compared to Qix titles, Cacoma Night seems like one of the easiest. The game gives you 4 continues. Scattered in the level are treasure chests, which grant power-ups like speed up and time freezes. You make lines by drawing with magic chalk, and you can go backwards on your line. If you get hit, you get stunned in place and can continue your line. There are 3 characters you can choose from, which differ in their chalk speed. Playing as Jean here makes it a real cakewalk with how fast you are, but then if you play as the robot character, you are incredibly slow. Who would want to play like this? Ugh! The characters basically act as a difficulty selection. One fault I would say this game has is that the lag is very noticeable. If you cover a large section of the grid, you'll have to wait a few seconds for the game to catch up and process what's happening. Remember when I said this game seemed easy? Well, it does in the first half. As you progress, the sparks start going lightning fast, and it's very easy to get lost in all the busyness of Bizyland. If you're good, you can get to the end of the game in less than an hour. And with the different characters and overall randomness of this title, there's a fair bit to enjoy here. This one also supports 2 players, where you both can play on the same puzzle together, so it's got that going for it as well. For 16-bit consoles, Cacoma Night in Bizyland is pretty fun, and for Super Nintendo, there aren't a lot of games like it. Meanwhile, Taito was hard at work developing a real follow-up for Qix in arcades. The key features introduced in Super Qix and those shown in Cacoma Night would go on to the spiritual successor of Qix, Volfied. Volfied was released in 1989 and was designed by Fukio Mitsuji, who is best known for creating Bubble Bobble. Volfied, or Volfied, however you prefer, has a space aesthetic as you play as a spaceship. This time you are on a clock, with each stage as you go against different monsters, much like in Super Qix. The power-ups are obtained by capturing these boxes. Shields, speed-ups, and time stops are here, along with a laser ability that lets you destroy smaller enemies. Sparks are not present in this version, but the main robot alien thing in each stage can shoot projectiles at you, so be careful. Volfied feels a little bit more calculated due to not being rushed by incoming sparks like in Qix, but the looming timer still makes you take more risks and act quickly at times. Volfied was mostly successful, but not as much as its predecessor.
Volfied came to home consoles, but in America, these versions kept up a Qix naming convention. The first was on the Sega Genesis and was called Ultimate Qix in North America. Visually, it's not the best to look at, and holy moly is this game so loud. Given stock Genesis sound as well, this can be grating to listen to. It's an early Genesis title, released in 1991, so I can understand where it's coming from. You can change difficulty in the main menu, which changes the speed of your ship and have different game modes, some of which eliminate the smaller enemies, for example. This game is very okay. If you want a home console version of Volfied, I would recommend the other home console released called Qix Neo. Released in 2001 on the PlayStation, this version was released by Mudduck, which was part of ZeniMax. They helped make a few other PlayStation games like Air Hockey and horse racing game. So this is probably their best work. It plays similar to Ultimate Qix, but visually better, naturally. The audio is a lot cleaner here too. I was able to get further in this game, and honestly, this one can be pretty tough. Each boss has a different type of pattern, and later stages just get so ridiculous. I mean, what am I supposed to do here? These beetles are way too quick to the point that randomness is almost beneficial, since it becomes reactionary what to do. Despite that, this one can still be pretty fun. I still prefer Qix over Volfied, but it's still interesting to see how they develop follow-ups to the game. Qix has continued periodically throughout more recent years. The Game Boy Color received Qix Adventure in 1999 in PAL regions. This version includes talking animals between stages with story elements, so it's pretty cute. Battle Qix, released for the PlayStation in Japan in 2002, uses an anime theme for its background. Dino Master for the Nintendo DS, released in 2005, uses a Qix-like element as well as you collect fossils and help raise dinosaurs. Most recently, Qix was released on Xbox Live Arcade in 2009, with it coming to the PlayStation Portable for Japan only. It's almost a mix aesthetically of Qix and Volfied in a way. The Qix in each level have different forms, one of which is just like the original. There are a lot of versions and ways to play Qix. I still prefer the traditional geometric design and simpler gameplay of the original, but if you like the innovations that followed, there are a lot of options for you. The Game Boy version, I would say, is the best one for your wallet, and the one I've spent the most time with. The unique gameplay type is something that draws me the most to Qix. From Jezzball to Volfied, the evolution of the series brings a lot of variety for a puzzling action game. There's nothing else quite like Qix.
And that is a history of Qix. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching, and let me know if there's a Qix clone or another game similar to it I may have missed in my research. Until next time now, take care.